Hello folks, welcome back. In this tutorial we're going to look at blending modes in Adobe After Effects. Before we go into the tutorial though, I just want to talk a little bit about how After Effects actually mixes layers together. How does it combine layers and blend them to create a new image? Well, probably the thing to sort of focus on first of all is actually the order that the layers are stacked above each other. When we actually blend images together and use blending modes, what Adobe After Effects will do is it will make sure that the layer on the top is always the dominant image. When things are mixed together, or blending modes are used, what Adobe After Effects will do is draw from the layer underneath and mix what's in the layer underneath into the layer above. So as an example, on my layer below at the bottom here, I've got a gradient ramp that I've just added a slightly sort of reddy pink tinge to. So when I do some blending, this layer on the top, this image of a dam, will remain dominant and it will draw up from beneath it the gradient ramp. Now, just to explain that, the most basic sort of blending mode of all is still opacity. So if I start to fade that down, it's drawing from the gradient ramp the slightly pink colour underneath. The layer on the top is still the dominant one though. Even though I've faded this down and we've drawn a lot of the pale red solid up into it, the layer on the top is still dominant. So as an example, if I now push this red solid above it, it's now the dominant layer and it's completely wiping out the image of the dam underneath. I'm just going to pull that back down and I'm going to put the opacity back up to 100. Now the blending modes are found here in this column. If you don't have the blending modes, so as an example I'll just switch it off, so if the blending modes aren't apparent in the timeline, you can do a right click here and go to columns and modes, or you might want to toggle down here to put the blending modes on. Now there's a vast array of modes that you can use, and to be honest, when it comes to blending modes there's really two functions. Function number one is to do sort of subtle effects to images or films, and function number two is to actually blend images together probably in a more abstract way if you were doing a piece of experimental film, music video or piece of video art. Now I'm going to start with the sort of more subtle end of things. What I want to do is I've got this layer underneath, this is my gradient ramp, and I've got the sort of pink colour at the top. What I want to do is mix that layer from underneath to this image of the dam so that the sky goes a slightly more pinky colour. I want to give it a little bit more of a sort of a romantic atmospheric look, and I can use blending modes to do that. So I'm going to go on this drop down menu, and there's a vast array to choose from. I'll talk a little bit about the differences later on. The blending mode I'm going to go for is multiply. And as you can see, it's drawn from the gradient ramp underneath and it's added the red element to the sky above. It's sort of mixed the colour together, but it's not damaged them in any great way in terms of the colours underneath. These have all sort of retained their natural state. We've just altered the sky a little bit to, it may be the case you're trying to create a certain atmosphere in a film or give it a different look. So blending modes are very good for subtle sort of changes to an image. In all honesty, if you're doing subtle changes to say sky or grass or a building or something a bit atmospheric, it's often actually multiplies the one that you probably use the most. So that's actually blending modes for sort of subtle effects. And as I did say earlier, however, often a lot of people, if they're doing work that's a bit more, say, stylish or experimental or maybe something like a music video or piece of video art, blending modes can be quite good to actually mix layers together like paint and create actually a third image. And I'll show you an example I made earlier. Let me just delete that underneath. I've got an image of a sort of a fire extinguisher on the top, and underneath I've got a piece of fractal noise. I've created some sort of, it's quite basic I'll admit, but sort of some fire and smoke, whatever you like, rising up. Now I want to blend this sort of fire and smoke looking effect onto the fire extinguisher above. I'm just going to put it back to normal, the blending mode. So I've got the fire extinguisher and I'm going to click on, I'm going to go for multiply, and we've got a nice mix of the fire on the fire extinguisher there. And just to explain a little bit more about what these do, is the ones you're probably going to use the most are probably the ones from sort of here. Whoops, apologies, didn't mean to tap on that. The ones you're probably going to use the most are sort of these ones here, and these ones here. Now, this bracket that I'm just scrolling up and down on, when you use these ones, they will usually darken an image. So these ones, if you actually apply them, when they mix together, the image will get a bit darker. These ones here, if you use these, the image will always get slightly lighter. So when, again, if we could use an analogy of, say, sort of like paint or light, when these are sort of blended together, the image will always go lighter. And I'll give you an example. If we go and lighten here, as you can see, the image is a lot brighter. If we go to add, the image has been brightened further still. So these ones will darken an image. These ones will lighten an image. And these ones here will boost the contrast of an image and also boost the colours, as you can see. The ones that go further down, these ones are often quite interesting. These ones actually become sort of quite abstract. I'm going to go for exclusion here. It's quite a nice one. We've got some of the flames actually appearing to come through the letters. I'm just going to render that out and you can have a look at how it works. So it's, it's a fairly abstract, playful image, but again, it's very good if you're trying to do something maybe a bit more experimental. Again, some video artwork possibly. And they're quite nice ways because they're two images combined together to sort of create a third. As ever, the thing to do with blending modes and to do with After Effects a lot of the time is to play, experiment, and see how things can be combined. One final point as well, you're probably going to notice that actually by going into here all the time and clicking on them one by one can be a little bit tedious. So there is a little shortcut you can do on the keyboard. If you hold down the Shift key and then tap plus or minus, it'll scroll through the effects for you. So you can very quickly scroll through them and sort of zero in. Oh, that's quite a dramatic one. So you can quickly scroll through them and zero in on effects that you really want. I'm going to leave it on that. That's certainly looking very much like a piece of dramatic fire. So hold the Shift key, minus or plus on the keyboard, and it gives you a lovely method of scrolling through them. So they're the two uses really. For abstract purposes, like this one here, or this one here, more sort of subtle film-like or photography effects. Okay folks, hope you found that useful. See you in the next tutorial.